It was early afternoon, around 2:30 p.m., when Captain Marcus Hale stepped onto the command deck of the Fleet Cybernetics Command Training Facility, LC-1 Cerberus. The air was cool and dry, humming with the steady pulse of machines. Rows of simulation consoles stretched out beneath soft blue lights, each one manned by junior officers and enlisted technicians monitoring the progress of an ongoing cyber warfare exercise. Hale's uniform was immaculate, every ribbon and insignia in perfect order. His stride carried the kind of authority that came from years of believing he was the smartest man in the room. He paused near the central console, scanning the deck with a look of practiced control. Around him, sailors worked quickly but stiffly, aware that their commanding officer was watching. Hale liked that. He enjoyed the quiet tension his presence created. To him, discipline was best measured by silence and the number of eyes that refused to meet his. Then, out of the corner of his vision, he noticed movement that didn't fit the picture. A woman stood near the primary interface table, dressed in an olive green flight suit with no name patch, no rank, no unit designation. She was studying a schematic on a tablet. Her posture relaxed, one hand resting lightly against the console's edge. To Hale, she looked like a civilian who had wandered into a place she didn't belong. He frowned, his irritation sharp and immediate. He walked toward her pirouette, boots clicking against the deck. His voice cut through the hum of electronics as he asked if she knew where she was standing. The woman didn't answer. She didn't even look up. Hale's tone grew colder, the edge of mockery slipping into it as he called her lost and suggested she take her coffee and notepad back to the civilian wing before she spilled something worth more than her salary. The crew laughed nervously, unsure whether they should. Their eyes flicked between the captain's confident glare and the woman's stillness. She didn't flinch or defend herself. She only continued to scroll across her tablet, calm and deliberate. The faint reflection of blue light moved across her expressionless face. Hale felt his annoyance turn into something heavier, though he couldn't explain why. The silence around her wasn't submission. It was composure, the kind that unsettled even a man used to command. The moment hung there, quiet and strange, like the first distant rumble before a storm. The hum of the consoles seemed louder now, filling the silence left after the captain's words. Captain Marcus Hale stood rigid, the muscles in his jaw tightening as he watched the woman ignore him completely. Around the command deck, officers and technicians pretended to work, their eyes flicking up from glowing displays. No one spoke. No one dared. Hale's voice cut through the room again, sharper, harder, as he demanded to know who she was and what she was doing on a restricted U.S. Navy training floor. His words carried the authority of rank, but beneath it, there was irritation, something close to embarrassment. The woman didn't respond. Her focus remained fixed on the tablet in her hand, her fingers scrolling slowly through a stream of code that only she seemed to understand. Hale felt the quiet press against his authority like a wall. He moved closer, boots striking the deck with measured precision. His tone rose, accusing her of violating protocol, of walking into a classified simulation without clearance. Still nothing. Not even a blink. That silence felt deliberate, calculated, and it made his pulse quicken. In a flash of anger, he stepped forward, grabbed her by the arm, and turned her around. The sound of impact echoed as her shoulder met the steel bulkhead. The crew froze. The tension on the deck snapped into stillness, as if the air itself had stopped moving. Hale leaned in close, his breath sharp, his words low but loud enough for everyone to hear as he threatened to send her to the brig. Her eyes lifted, calm and unreadable, gray, like the sea, under clouded skies. She didn't speak or pull away. She just looked at him, steady, quiet, unflinching. Something in that silence unsettled him more than defiance ever could. For the first time, Hale felt the weight of his own voice against the quiet presence of someone who didn't need one. The crew sensed it too. Beneath the polished metal and steady lights, something deeper had shifted. From his place near the rear of the command deck, Commodore Raymond Jennings stood half in shadow, watching the confrontation unfold. The air felt charged, like static before a storm. He had spent more than 30 years in the Navy and had seen arrogance often. But something about this moment unsettled him. The woman's reaction, or lack of it, drew his attention. Her back was against the steel bulkhead, yet her posture wasn't defensive. It was balanced, deliberate, the stance of someone who had been trained to absorb force and counter it if needed. Jennings narrowed his eyes, studying the small details the younger officers missed. Her breathing was slow and measured. One hand hung relaxed at her side, the other still holding the tablet, thumb resting near its corner as though it were an extension of her body. Every movement, or rather the absence of movement, told a story he recognized from years of observing special operations personnel. This wasn't fear. It was control. Whoever she was. She didn't belong in a data analyst's chair. A quiet chill crept through him as memories surfaced from classified briefings long ago. Stories of individuals within Cyber Command who combined digital warfare expertise with physical training that rivaled special forces. Operators who disappeared into projects so secret that even flag officers whispered about them. Jennings felt that same uneasy reverence now, realizing the truth before anyone else did. The captain thought he was facing defiance. Jennings understood he was facing discipline, the kind forged only in the highest echelons of command. The silence that followed felt heavier than the impact had been. Captain Marcus Hale stepped back, trying to recover his composure. But before he could speak, the main holographic display flickered. The soft blue light that filled the command deck turned harsh and red as a line of code began to scroll across the projection. It started slowly, then cascaded faster, flooding every system screen. An automated voice filled the room, flat and mechanical, announcing Protocol Omega engaged. The sound of it froze everyone in place for a heartbeat before the deck erupted into motion. Across the consoles, ensigns and petty officers scrambled to regain control of the simulation. Reports came in broken bursts. Primary control, unresponsive. Systems locked out. The simulated fleet that had moments ago filled the screen with calm blue icons now dissolved into red static. Hale barked for a systems check, for engineering to verify control integrity. His commands collided with the growing noise of alarms. The lighting dimmed, then shifted entirely to emergency red. Every hum and whir of machinery now felt like a heartbeat out of rhythm. At the forward console, a young ensign's voice cracked as he reported loss of command functions. He said they were locked out of the network and that the primary override was disabled. Hale ordered an immediate reboot. No response. Ordered an uplink to Central Command. Nothing. His voice grew louder, faster, as he demanded answers no one could give. The technician's fingers flew across unresponsive keyboards, tapping like rain on metal. Panic spread in quiet, efficient waves. The training scenario had become a live crisis. Through it all, the woman stood motionless. The glow from her tablet reflected off her face, her eyes scanning the room but showing no alarm. Her calm was the only still thing left in the chaos. Commodore Jennings watched her from the shadows, realizing that she was studying the collapse rather than reacting to it. She wasn't surprised. She was assessing. The automated voice returned. Colder this time, repeating over the blaring alarms. Containment breach imminent. Containment breach imminent. The words echoed through the deck, mixing with the pounding of boots and the hum of machines that suddenly felt alive. The alarms screamed like a living thing. Red lights strobed across the command deck, painting the faces of the crew in flashes of panic. Captain Hale's voice carried above the noise, cutting through the confusion as he ordered system overrides and emergency resets. No one could comply. Consoles refused input. Communications were dead. Every technician on the deck was moving, shouting, trying, failing. Then, through all that chaos, the woman in the olive green flight suit moved. Her steps were unhurried, steady, almost soundless on the metal floor. She crossed the deck toward a secondary engineering terminal near the aft bulkhead, a console reserved for diagnostics and emergency system access. While others scrambled to control the main command interface, she knelt by the smaller terminal and pulled a coiled Type D secure maintenance cable from a pocket on her flight suit. The motion was fluid, practiced, like muscle memory born from years of precision work. Without looking up or asking permission, she connected her Navy-issued tablet to the encrypted port beneath the terminal. Her fingers began to move. The screen of her tablet glowed to life, casting a soft light over her face. Her hands moved in a rhythm that seemed almost musical. Swipe, tap, drag, enter. Each gesture was deliberate, efficient, fast. The data on the main holographic display began to shift. The red storm of corrupted code slowed, then reorganized into neat columns of command strings. One by one, alarms stopped. The synthesized voice announcing the breach cut out mid-sentence. A heartbeat later, the red lights faded into soft operational blue. The entire sequence took less than 90 seconds. The crew froze, staring as the hum of the facility returned to its calm, even rhythm. The woman's breathing never changed. She unplugged the cable, coiled it neatly, and returned it to her pocket. Then she stood, eyes sweeping once more across the displays as if confirming her work. Every console flickered back to green operational status. The silence that followed felt immense, almost reverent, like the space after a storm has passed. Captain Hale stood near the command chair, hands still raised from his last failed order. His voice was gone. Around him, officers and sailors stared at the woman who had just done the impossible. She gave no acknowledgement, no expression of triumph. Her calm was absolute, the kind that made the loudest men suddenly remember how quiet real power could be. The silence on the Cerberus command deck felt absolute. Screens glowed softly, steady, and blue once again. No one moved. No one breathed louder than the hum of the ventilation system. Then the heavy steel door at the rear of the deck hissed open, cutting through the stillness. Commodore Raymond Jennings stepped inside, flanked by two Marines in full base security gear. The faint sound of their boots echoed as they advanced toward the center of the room. Jennings's expression was composed, but carried the weight of something irreversible. He didn't pause or look around. He walked past Captain Hale without acknowledgement and stopped in front of the woman in the olive green flight suit. The entire crew watched, confusion tightening in their chests. Jennings drew himself up to full height, heels clicking sharply together. Then, in a single, precise motion, he raised his right hand in a salute so formal and deliberate that the room seemed to hold its breath. It wasn't the casual acknowledgement of peers. It was the salute of a subordinate to a superior flag officer. When he spoke, his voice carried the full authority of command. "Rear Admiral Eva Rostova," he said, somber, "the architect of Project Cerberus and director of cyber operations, U.S. Cyber Command." The revelation struck like a shockwave. The crew froze in disbelief. Even the hum of the servers felt quieter. Captain Hale's eyes went wide, color draining from his face as the realization crashed over him. He had laid hands on a flag officer, one of the most decorated and secretive leaders in the modern Navy. Jennings didn't look at him. He gave the order calmly, instructing the Marines to escort Hale to his quarters until further notice. The captain didn't resist. His voice failed him completely. Admiral Rostova stood motionless through it all. She didn't acknowledge the salute until the very end, offering only a small nod that felt both final and forgiving. Her face was unreadable, her calm more commanding than any raised voice. In that quiet, the hierarchy of power rearranged itself. Authority no longer came from the loudest order, but from the quiet presence of someone who no longer needed to speak to be obeyed. The Marines had already led Captain Hale off the deck, leaving behind only the echo of their boots and a silence that no one dared to break. The crew stood at their stations, uncertain whether to return to work or simply breathe again. Commodore Jennings moved slowly to the primary holographic console. His hand hovered over the control pad before bringing up the personnel file that would confirm what they all now knew but could hardly believe. The display filled with light, revealing Rear Admiral Eva Rostova's record in perfect, glowing detail. Her list of awards scrolled upward like a history lesson in excellence. The Defense Superior Service Medal with 2 oak leaf clusters, the Legion of Merit, the Navy Distinguished Service Medal. The citations continued, each one a testament to decades of quiet mastery. Under assignments, her name appeared beside the title Director, Project Cerberus, U.S. Cyber Command, Special Operations Directorate. The realization spread slowly through the room. The system they had spent years training on had been written, line by line, by the woman standing calmly in front of them. She had built the world they operated in. Jennings read the information in silence, his face expressionless. But the tension in his jaw said everything. No one else moved. When Rostova finally spoke, her voice was steady, her words deliberate. She explained that the system had not malfunctioned. It had responded exactly as it was designed to. The failure came from a flaw in the architecture, a recursive loop triggered by a specific packet within the training scenario. Her tone was clinical, almost detached, but there was meaning under every word. She wasn't blaming them. She was teaching them. Her gaze moved across the deck, meeting the eyes of each officer in turn. She told them that their crew had been trained to operate the system, not to understand it. That distinction, she said, was the most dangerous weakness of modern command. True mastery demanded comprehension, not compliance. The room absorbed her words in silence. No one dared to shift or speak. Rostova turned back toward Jennings, her voice soft but unyielding. Leadership without comprehension is fragile. Authority without humility is dangerous. The simplicity of it hung in the air like a verdict. Jennings gave a slow nod, saying nothing. The officers straightened unconsciously, as though standing in formation before something greater than command itself. In that moment, the deck of the Cerberus felt less like a war room and more like a classroom. The crisis was over, but the lesson had only just begun. Weeks passed quietly after the incident at the Cerberus command facility. The official report never mentioned the confrontation, only citing a reassignment for operational efficiency. Captain Marcus Hale was transferred to a naval logistics depot in Nevada, far from the ocean, far from anything that hummed with ambition. His office was a small, windowless room filled with the smell of paper, old coffee, and dust. Outside, forklifts rumbled across sun-baked concrete while sailors and civilian staff moved crates and containers with steady precision. It wasn't punishment, at least not on paper, but everyone understood what it really was. Hale arrived each morning at 7:15 a.m. and left after sunset. The noise of the depot replaced the chatter of command decks. Days blurred into each other, measured by the sound of stamping forms and the mechanical rhythm of forklifts reversing. At first, he hated it. Then, slowly, he began to notice things. The petty officer in charge of cargo operations moved 10 tons of equipment as smoothly as if he were flying a jet. A young clerk balanced supply chains so efficiently that not a single shipment missed schedule. No one bragged. No one needed to. Their competence spoke for them. He started talking less and watching more. He began to understand the calm that lived inside true professionals. These people didn't lead through volume. They led through results. Late one evening, Hale stood outside the depot as the sun dropped behind the desert horizon. The air was still, the silence deep. For the first time in years, he didn't feel diminished by it. He felt grounded. In that fading light, he understood what Admiral Rostova had meant. Leadership was never about how loudly you commanded. It was about how deeply you understood. For the next week, Admiral Eva Rostova remained at the Cerberus training facility. She didn't occupy the command chair or sit behind Jennings's desk. She simply walked the deck each morning, observing. The crew who once whispered her name in fear now watched her with quiet respect. Her presence carried no weight of authority, only the calm gravity of experience. When she stopped beside a console, she didn't give orders. She asked questions. Why was this line of code structured this way? Could the process be made more efficient? The questions were never accusations. They were invitations to think. Her method was quiet, but transformative. The officers and technicians began to mirror her approach, asking their own questions, double-checking assumptions, and explaining their reasoning to one another. The tone of the deck changed. Where there had once been anxiety and competition, there was now curiosity and collaboration. Rostova never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her authority lived in the precision of her thoughts and the respect her actions inspired. When she paused to review a simulation, she would lean slightly closer to the display, tracing patterns of code with her fingertip as if feeling the pulse of the machine itself. By the end of the week, the facility felt different. Systems ran smoother, communication flowed naturally, and morale lifted in subtle but unmistakable ways. Before her departure, the crew decided to honor her in the simplest way possible. They engraved her phrase, "Efficiency is its own form of elegance," onto a small stainless steel plaque and mounted it on the bulkhead where she had once stood during the confrontation. They called the spot the Admiral's Corner. Officers began touching the plaque before major drills, not as a ritual of superstition, but as a reminder of what competence truly meant. When Rostova left Cerberus at sunrise the following Monday, the deck was silent again. But it was a different kind of silence, one filled with focus and purpose. She had reshaped the command without issuing a single order. Her legacy was not written in medals or reports, but in the steady hands and quiet minds of those she left behind. Several months later, the Cerberus training facility ran with a rhythm that felt both new and familiar. The blue glow of the main displays bathed the command deck in quiet light. The hum of machines, steady and calm. Ensign Miller, now more confident but still humble in his role, was reviewing simulation logs when a small package arrived at his workstation. It carried no name, no seal, only a serial number and a clearance tag far above his level. Inside, he found a sleek Navy data slate, its screen already active, showing a single encrypted file labeled Cerberus Core Source. He hesitated before opening it. When the file loaded, he saw lines of code cascading like water across the screen, annotated in precise, careful handwriting. The logic was flawless. Each function and structure flowed seamlessly into the next. It was beautiful, in a way only someone who truly understood it could see. Then he noticed the metadata signature embedded deep in the file. It was subtle, almost invisible, but he recognized it instantly. Admiral Eva Rostova. No note, no message, just her work, passed quietly to him. Miller sat for a long time, reading her annotations. Every line carried intention, every comment a lesson. He remembered her calm presence and her voice when she spoke about efficiency and grace. This wasn't a gift of data. It was a passing of legacy. Around him, the crew worked with focus and composure, their movements shaped by the culture she had left behind. Across the deck, the plaque on the Admiral's corner reflected the soft blue light. The words engraved into it were simple. Efficiency is its own form of elegance. Miller looked at it and smiled. He understood now. Legacy wasn't something written in reports or carved into medals. It lived quietly, in the precision of a system, in the steady hands that carried it forward, and in the silent example of those who built without needing to be seen.